see the end of the month. I want to take this opportunity to wish all Muslims in the country and around the world happy Ramadan. And we all know that it's a period of sacrifice, it's a period of immense supplications. It's also a period of restraint, and we hope that whatever restraint that we practice in this month will follow us through the rest of our lives and not just for the month. And so happy Ramadan. I'm sure that I'll wish you happy Salah, that is Eid al-Fitr, when we are breaking our fast. Hoping that next year you also try a bit of it, because it is very healthy, apart from the fact that you are worshipping and restraining yourself in terms of the enjoyment of pleasure. It also has a lot of health benefits, so you should try it.
I will, definitely. I will. Since you're in a month of restraint, I know that then you're not going to criticize government very much. A month of restraint.
Well, a month of restraint does not say that we shouldn't do good. You are restraining yourself from bad. And criticizing government, the last time I checked, wasn't bad, especially when government has to be criticized. And on that note, I will start by saying that I think our president enjoys a lot of talk. He loves the speeches that he reads. I fail to see any practical action backing the words that he uses. So yesterday he was at the CEO summit, and all he talked about, you couldn't really see any actions in the last 18 months that suggests that indeed this is a man who means what he's doing. Now, he was very contradictory too. I think the fact remains that we need strong banks. The fact also remains that we need local indigenous banks. But the problem over the years has always been how to do that and who has that will, and the determination to make it happen. I get confused when I listen to the president and his appointees. First of all, the president says, okay, Bank of Ghana should play its role. The president also says Bank of Ghana should sanitize the, banking sector. And again says that Bank of Ghana should help local indigenous banks, to be strong. And in the same breath, or if you put it against what the evidence is on the ground, you realize that, sorry, there's been some, yeah, so you realize that sorry about that interruption. So you realize that you have the president saying one thing and the practice doesn't match it. He says, for example, that the Bank of Ghana is an independent body that is supposed to carry out its functions as, governed by the act that was passed to make the bank independent. Then you have his vice president says, indeed, his government is the one that awards contracts at the Bank of Ghana. And previous governments were responsible for contracts at the Bank of Ghana. And his government is responsible for award of contracts. As basic as contracts. I'm talking about an administrative function of the Bank of Ghana.
Okay, you're saying that making that inference of decoupling and then what?
Yes, so that's why I say I get that contradiction. So okay. He says, okay, the Bank of Ghana is doing its role as an autonomous body to bring about sanity, which should be the ideal case. But then you listen to his vice president and you don't get that sense that the Bank of Ghana is really allowed to work independently. And you put that against the evidence on the ground. The fact that about 3 governors of the bank have all left since this government came into office.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. You mean
3 governors. 3 governors. The governor and 2 deputies have all left. under very bizarre circumstances. And so you hear the vice president take credit for, you know, an administrative function such as an award of a contract. Then you understand what is happening at the Bank of Ghana that might have led to the exits of these governors. Then the president says, we can't do anything about the local banks that were affected by the decision of the Bank of Ghana, but we are only encouraging the Bank of Ghana to help support the local indigenous banks. And you are left wondering who is telling you the truth and what is really happening in government. But like I said,
do you by any way, with the president's utterance and that assurance, question perhaps not only the president but government's commitment towards ensuring that local banks are protected?
I don't
because
get
you're saying that what happens on the ground really doesn't support that utterance.
Exactly. Because you see, the president received a petition from some of these banks. And
actually,
the president,
a collection of the banks.
Yes, and the president said he was setting up a committee to look at the petitions of the, you know, of the bankers. But the president says he has no hand in the operations of the bank. And in fact, that is what should be the case, because the law does not allow the president to interfere or any other person to interfere in the operations of the Bank of Ghana. So what is the president unable to tell these bankers who have petitioned him? What is he unable to tell them? Is there a way, I mean, of him interfering in ensuring that they are protected? And look, some of the banks have made very, very, you know, reasonable, you know, contributions to the need for the Bank of Ghana to approach whatever, you know, regulations they want to implement cautiously. Because you hear the argument of high-end lending and the need for these banks to have a certain capital base to be able to do that high-end lending. But some of the bankers are saying that not all of us want to do the high-end lending.
So create a space for us.
So if we want to, you know, lend to small and medium enterprises, we don't need the capital requirement that you are asking us all to, you know, abide by. And there is evidence that in the past, the capital base requirement was about 60 million. It was moved to 120 million. And the problem of the bank's insolvency remains with us. So perhaps it should give us cause to begin to ask ourselves if indeed the only solution is just raising the capital of these banks. So I think what is, you know, accepted by all Ghanaians is the fact that we need strong banks and we need indigenous banks for that matter to be strong. But the approach is not very clear, and it is only in line with the inconsistencies that you see with this government.
Well, if there's any phrase at all, I have to invite you into the discussions. And welcome. Good morning to you.
Thank you. Sincere apologies for running a little late.
No, that's okay.
Good morning to my very good friend.
It's accepted. Do you find any dichotomy between what the president is saying, the posture of the Bank of Ghana, and the concerns even being raised by the local banks? Hearing, on one side, we know they are supposed to meet a capitalization of 400 million Ghana cedis, but we're also told on one hand that if you look at how the banks are performing over a period, they have not been in some good stable, so to speak, as far as looking at their books are. But the commitment from the president, given all the assurances that we want to protect the local banks, how do we put all that into perspective?
Well, good morning to our cherished viewers this morning. I have listened to my brother closely, and of course, he is worried that the president likes to speak. He says that the president loves speeches. Of course, those of us who love to be inspired, who want to remain hopeful, who think that the president ought to consistently and constantly provide reassurance and inform the people of Ghana about what it is that his government is doing. Always love to hear him speak. So I guess that my brother will have to brace himself for more, because His Excellency the President is doing his bit and he will continue to speak to the people of Ghana who gave him the mandate to, as it were, manage the affairs of state for the next 4 years. He says that the president essentially contradicts himself, and I guess that's the basis for your asking me whether there's a dichotomy in the statement that the president made. I don't think so at all. Of course, we live within a system governed by rules. We all know that the Bank of Ghana is independent in terms of its financial mediation role, supervision of the banks, and its core functions. And I will address the issue that he raised relative to what the bank, the vice president said in relation to the interoperability contract, which he thinks that by virtue of the fact that the Bank of Ghana is independent, it is not answerable to any authority, because that is not what the law provides for at all. Let me deal with that even before I come to your issue of dichotomy. Look, if you look at the composition of the board of Bank of Ghana, it clearly tells you that 3 governors and then I believe 9 others who are appointed by the president. Boards are supposed to be the directing minds behind every institution. So clearly, the management of the institution itself is completely separate and distinct from the functions that they perform in respect of what it is that they have to do in terms of monetary policy and financial intermediation, providing, acting as lender of last resort to government and all the other things. So the fact that a management decision has been taken to procure a certain software for 4.8 billion Ghana cedis clearly would require the board to approve, and that clearly is a government action. Okay, so if another government comes in and reviews that same process and save this country by awarding that same contract to an internal entity for 16 million Ghana cedis, of course there ought to be credit where it is due, and people who slept on the job and supervised this almost one ton stealing of public resources ought to stand up and be counted. Okay, so let's not confuse the issues at all. The Bank of Ghana is independent, yes, but in respect of their core functions, that does not take away the fact that they are answerable to a superior authority. After all, the Minister of Finance is named as the supervisory minister in the Bank of Ghana Act, clearly. Okay, now issue of dichotomy. Bank of Ghana is exercising its functions under the law. They are supposed to ensure that our financial system is strong to provide the needed support for our economy. Over the years, they have set the minimum capital requirements for banks. Indeed, at the time that they moved the minimum capital requirement from 25 million to 60 million, I was in First Atlantic Merchant Bank, then, now First Atlantic Bank. And we went through a lot of struggle to raise the capital. Indeed, it was part of the reason why the bank's Ghanaian ownership changed to Nigerian, essentially. Okay, we need the capital to enable the bank's run. And Bank of Ghana now has increased the minimum capital requirement subsequently to 120 and now to 400 million. Ghanaian banks have made representations to government, of course, clearly, because of the respect for the clear boundary that exists between management and the performance of their core functions. Government cannot intervene and issue directives to the Bank of Ghana that, look, create an exceptional situation for the Ghanaian banks. Okay, so the president can only encourage them that, look, yes, to the extent that you are independent, to the extent that you need to manage the financial system, to the extent that you have the power to set these minimum capital requirements, it's important in doing so within our own framework of government, Ghana Beyond Aid, to ensure that the Ghanaian banks do not necessarily lose their identity or lose out within the space. Clearly, it's moral suasion. Okay, now if the president has set up a committee to as it were, investigate the concerns that the Ghanaian banks raised. You and I don't know what the recommendations of that committee would come up with as to whether they would ask government to make some facilities available for the Ghanaian banks to enable them meet the minimal capital requirements or not. It's not known to us. So why are we prejudging? Why are we drawing conclusions that the president is in one breath asking the Bank of Ghana to do their job, and in another breath saying that they should reconsider the decision that the Bank of Ghana is taking that necessarily will impact some of the Ghanaian banks? He can persuade, he can make suggestions, he can make recommendations, but it behoves on the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana to either take those recommendations or not. Government cannot issue directives. Indeed, if government had the power to do that, I'm sure that some decision would have been taken in that regard. Because I was not enthused about the way and manner with which, during their time, they let the ownership of First Atlantic go to the Nigerians. Indeed, but for some pressure or compulsion that got SNET to sell their stake in the bank to Kedari, it probably would have retained this Ghanaian identity. But decisions that were taken at the time led to that situation arising. So let's, as it were, give time and space for the process to evolve. And then at the end of the day, whatever decisions that the Bank of Ghana makes, we can all, at that appropriate time, if need be, critique it. But to say that, the president is being inconsistent,
the concerns you had
I don't get it.
With First Atlantic Merchant Bank and, the change in the structure of the shareholding, etc. It's almost like it's a replica of the situation for which that these concerns are also being raised. So I guess it's, if concerns were raised then, and this one is personally by you, or you had that opinion, then I guess people can also have the same opinion. But let's move on. Let's move on. Let's move on. Let's move on. We've had the Ghana card is going to be issued now from the 28th of May 2018, and that's good news. We're told that the initial registration will be with Jubilee House, Parliament House. Yeah, the two of you will be captured. That's a good one. The president has the first one. And then we're told Ghana Police, the security agencies largely, before it trickles down to a section of the demographics of our population. But that's a good thing. We're told, according to what the commentary has been, we're told if you have a national identity database, it provides the fulcrum around which businesses could thrive. But also we can do planning, proper planning on many other things. Could be elections, could be many other things in the future.
I mean, you see, Roland, I think that it will be fair to correct some factual inaccuracies in the presentation that has just been made by my brother. I was hoping you will do the intervention, but since you didn't, it becomes imperative for me to attempt,
okay, I give you
see, for example, I was talking about capitalization over the years. There has been work to show that the recapitalization of banks have not led to significant profits of these banks. So there's a need to do some rethinking. Then he talks about banks being allowed to go under. You recall that in this country before 2008, Ghana Commercial Bank and the ADB were almost being sold to private entrepreneurs. It took the NDC government, when it came into power in 2009, to position Agricultural Development Bank and position Ghana Commercial Bank to become so strong that today, when banks such as what's the name, Unique Bank and others are going down, Unibank and others are going down, Commercial Bank has the backbone to absorb it. A bank that they, when they were in power under President Akufo, said was doing so badly and needed to be sold to the private sector. It took a government with a focus, with a plan, to put those two banks back on track and to make those banks very competitive. So you're speaking in that perspective. Now, again, he talks about the Bank of Ghana contract. Roland, I mean, I think we have dealt with this discussion over the period, and I didn't even expect my brother to go there again because of the eggs on their faces when Dr. Bawumia first introduced the discussion. The former Deputy Bank of Ghana put the thing in context, and it is evidently clear to anybody who wants to know that indeed
that shambolic statement that he issued.
The current contract has led to the government of Ghana paying 16 million Ghana cedis from the taxpayer. And again, it has led to a situation where anybody who accesses that platform, the interoperability platform, will have to pay 2.5% of every transaction instead of 1.5%. So in the end, it is clear that this does not even cover the scope that the NDC government, I mean the Bank of Ghana under the NDC government was going to do, yet it is more expensive. Now, it is also clear to anybody who has gone through the documents and has listened to the actors that the previous transaction was at zero cost. And indeed, it is in a report by the YOCO, which was done in 2017. 2017, under Nana Akufo-Addo, the YOCO investigated that deal, which is now subject of international arbitration, to see whether there were breaches. And as part of the investigation
we're
report,
not discussing symptoms.
No, as part of the report, in fact, YOCO stated that the contract was going to be executed at no cost. And anybody with basic understanding of contracting will tell you that when you hear build, operate, and transfer, then what it means is that
we're not discussing symptoms. I think that what you have brought here,
he introduced it, and there's a need for you, and said that something was going to cost us 4.6 billion. It is simply fallacious.
Please,
it is inaccurate, and it is pure propaganda.
No, I will. It's important. Okay, there are no eggs on anybody's faces.
Oh, there are.
I have a fundamental, indeed, a deep understanding of contract issues. Okay, and I know that the only circumstances that warrant a PPP arrangement is where government hasn't got the funding, okay, and the management capability to execute a public service need. It is only under those circumstances that a third-party private sector player is introduced to partner government in the provision of those services. Now, here is a case that your government, contracted to outsource the performance of this thing at, yes, zero cost, but to recover from the people of Ghana
now he admits
tariffs to the tune of 4.6 billion.
1.5%.
Hold on,
at
please.
Cost.
Hold
now
on.
It is 2.5%.
You see,
it was 1.5%.
When I call them nation wreckers,
it is
they don't understand. But the point is this. Okay?
Tell me, the taxpayer
please,
that you are concerned about
let
was
me
to pay
finish.
1.5%. Now it is 2.5%.
Address.
Now, a new government comes.
Just
No,
recycling.
No, we're not recycling anything. No, not at all.
We're recycling.
A new government comes in
that's okay.
and says that rather than outsource this public service good
takes
to a third party to extract 4.6 billion from you over 15 years, okay, I am going to spend 16 million
from the taxpayer,
of
and
course,
then make the taxpayer pay 2.5 again
but the money goes back to the taxpayer. Okay, those monies still go back to the public kitty, as opposed to under the arrangement where you were ripping up the people of Ghana 4.6 billion into private pockets. That's the difference. Please,
so
we should all bow our heads down in shame when some of these things. It's not embarrassing.
Can we just move on? Can we just move on?
Let's be fair to the people of Ghana. Anybody who can defend this shameful contract.
Stop embarrassing himself in this manner.
Gentlemen, please, can we move on? Okay, so we're talking Ghana card. The two of you have made your point.
You think the Vice President is embarrassing himself?
Can we move on, gentlemen?
Ghana card.
Yeah, you coming to me first or to him?
Okay.
Or to you?
I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
Or if you don't want to.
I think, no, of course, I would deal with it.
Right.
Yes. There's been some challenges with the rollout. There were timelines that were given that clearly was not met. And it gives some of us some cause for concern, particularly with the propaganda that my brother and his colleagues sought to play with it, that yes, timelines have been given and they have not been met.
Is that propaganda? I think even independent commentators have
that's why I'm saying that they give
but if an
some of us
institution gives timelines and it doesn't meet it.
Of course, yes.
It creates a certain perception.
I agree. And so the impression was created. And that's where the propaganda comes in. As if to say this was never going to be done. And that it was one of those statements consistent with what they had been saying relative to 110 premium that never was, and that this thing was not going to see the light of day. Indeed, in 8 years since President Akufo started, and I still have my slip in my room. I saw it not too long ago when the registration commenced in 2007, I believe, that they completely neglected to continue with that noble policy, contrary to the directive principles of state policy that is clearly enshrined in our constitution. Thankfully, now we are where we are. This government has clearly demonstrated its commitment to deliver on its campaign promise, and we can't wait for 28 for the cards rollout to commence. Of course, I understand that there's going to be on a pilot basis across selected regions. I believe Greater Accra, and you list some institutions that are going to be the first beneficiaries of the card. And I'm hopeful that they would roll out completely across the country so that everybody, Ghanaians and non-Ghanaians, because bear in mind that there's a provision in the law that allows non-Ghanaians to be registered. Of course, non-resident non-Ghanaians to also, as it were, obtain their cards to enable us enhance the financial inclusion and gather the requisite data that will ensure the planning and rollout of government goods and services for the benefit of the greater majority of the people of Ghana.
Zero, I want to talk about embarrassment. This is another example of embarrassing oneself.
Why?
You have a president who goes to show himself before the cameras, go through a ceremony of getting a card and assuring all that by the end of the year, that was 2017, everyone was going to get a card to be known as citizens of this country. The vice president followed suit, it didn't happen. The vice president followed suit with another deadline, which they also didn't happen. And I remember one time in Parliament when we discussed something related to the national identification card. My colleague, Honorable Sam George of Pram Pram, made the point that it was only the president since that ceremony who has been issued with a Ghana card. The defense minister shamelessly, in another embarrassing fashion, stood on a point of order and indicated that he had seen the vice president's card and that it is not true that the president is the only one with a card. The speaker, embarrassingly, asked Honorable Sam George to retract because he placed more premium on the word of the defense minister, Honorable Michiwo. It turned out to be a lie. And that indeed Samuel George was right, that it is only the president since that ceremony who has a card that can be called Ghana card. And you see, my brother has also just peddled another falsehood.
Which is what? That
he still has his slip. And that since President Akufo left office,
don't you have a slip? Where you issued a card?
I have a card.
I don't.
Yes.
I never got my card.
I know that if you open the phone lines now, there are many people who will tell you that they also have a card, the Ghana card.
Well, I know thousands
of cards. I
have
seen other foreigners, who also have the card because non-residents are supposed to be registered. The only thing that has happened, I understand, at the time that they were distributing these cards under the NDC government, there was the need to, I don't understand the IT technology. There was a need to add some features. That is the chip embedded. The one I have was not chip embedded, so it didn't really have the biometrics and all those things. And so there was that new policy. At the time they were issuing the cards, I got brought my card at Letobio Koshi when I was working.
Well, I do understand. I was told by the NHI that my card was ready, but I still have the
It is
the
just
slip.
like that. I think the only difference is the chip, not this chip. I have my card. But everything is like this. National identity card, everything, just like this. If I knew this discussion was going to come up, I would have brought my card. And I know several other citizens who have their card. So this has been work in progress over the period.
Over 8 years?
No, no, more than 8 years. It started under President Akufo.
I think the concern he raised was that
but you see,
for 8
started
years
under
we never
President
brought
Akufo.
this into fruition.
No, for 8 years.
We didn't make it workable.
Roland, you see, for 8 years.
We didn't mainstream it.
No, what was started by
didn't
President,
get to see the light of
the
day.
falsehood I'm talking about is that what was started by President Akufo was actually continued until a point that it was decided that time had elapsed and there was a need to introduce new features.
Do an upgrade.
To do an upgrade.
Yeah.
So the process of the upgrade started.
Upgrading technology,
and then the
upgrading
NDC lost the election. These people cannot tell me if you go to the National Education Authority.
What's the point?
Roland.
Rolling out technology.
Roland.
Yes, sir.
You see, it took President Rawlings how many years not to give us an ID card? It took President Kufuor 8 years not to give us ID card.
Well, true.
So what really is the fuss if it took the NDC?
So you're saying I have no argument?
Yeah, there's no argument.
Yeah, okay.
There's no point. The fact is that the process was underway. And then there was new thinking that new features should be added. In fact, whatever is being done today is as a result of the structures that were put in place by the NDC to roll out the new card with the new features. Nothing spectacular has been introduced. The same company that was awarded the contract is the same company that is going to do it. Yeah. And that company was awarded the contract by the NDC government. What has changed? What has been added? What has been removed? So who gets the credit? It is only important that government remains a continuum. So it is okay that they are continuing with what the NDC government started. But it is not to say that the NDC was incapable of doing it in 8 years. The NDC inherited what they were incapable of doing, and in the process, even moved it faster than they could. But if at a certain point, realized that new technology had come up, and there was a need to incorporate the new technology in the system, and that was done. A company was selected to carry out the registration, in line with the need to introduce a new technology. So, I mean, we wish them well. But the only embarrassing thing is that they're shifting, deadlines, which is very, very consistent with all other things that they have promised. For example, they promised the people of Ghana free SHS for all students in senior high school. That hasn't happened. It changed to only first years. And so parents who had their awards in second and third years and voted them expecting free SHS are not enjoying it. They promised to build 51 factories.
Second years will enjoy. Those who are enjoying now going second year.
I'm talking about what was promised and what is delivered. I'm not talking about
Roland, you saw the manifesto.
The manifesto is there. They said all senior high school students.
You have a copy. Show me where it is.
Senior high school students.
Show me.
I can pull it out right now. I don't have a copy.
Pull it up.
Yes, if Roland will allow me to, I'll pull it out in our next discussion. But it says all children of school-going age in senior high school will get free SHS. That is the wording in the manifesto.
Well, they promised that all senior high schools.
They promised they were going to get 51 factories up and running by end of 2017. No show.
They have not formally said that.
They said that.
I think the assumption from arguments is that.
No. The president, when he cut short at Ekunfi, said by the end of the year, 51 of such factories. It is there. You check. You guys reported it. Don't deny it for him. I don't think the president would have been up and running. Yes, it would have been up and running.
And you're saying that they are lagging behind as far as meeting the deadlines.
I'm saying that the inconsistencies are not just limited to this deadline for national identification cards.
It's there all over.
They promise all unemployed graduates jobs. They are giving them internship. And they say we have provided the jobs. Total cheat.
Fancy get down. But at the end of the day, we know that ultimately when this is rolled out, we're gonna have great benefit from this.
That is why there's no need to do politics with this. This has been a policy every government has, worked at.
Let him take the questions and go ahead.
Because it is important that we have a national identity card. It is important. But when you reduce everything to propaganda and politics, then you miss the essence of that important, service.
Yeah. So, but ultimately, we're going to
coming from him.
Great users.
That's very rich, isn't it?
National.
Because you are the chief propagandist.
National.
You guys politicize everything.
Oh my God.
But why is there everything? No, it looks like every criticism on government and its issues is said to be propaganda.
I don't have a problem at all. Okay, and
but is it not true that the dates for delivery have been delaying?
But Roland, that was the first statement that I myself made.
So you've acknowledged?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
And look, we are not ostriches, and we won't pretend to be one. Yes, we make propositions. We set timelines. There are a whole lot of issues that ought to crystallize for those commitments to be realized. Some, unfortunately, do not materialize at the time that your projections allow you to. And the most important thing
is that tell the people that I can meet them.
But of course,
don't make them some shells promises, whet the appetite, and then delivery is not undertaken in the right time frame.
I promised my wife something 10 years ago. Okay. Oh, I will get you. Hey, of course, that and others. Okay, but of course, this material.
Yeah, it's true.
It's never been achieved because living with me, she knows my circumstances. And so I'm saying that the most important thing is for us to clearly maintain the commitment to do it. You made promises in your 2008 manifesto.
It's not
that
the same.
After 16 years,
that sort of commitment you make to your wife,
I'm coming.
It's for better, for worse.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm saying that.
We're not supposed to rule with NPP and DC for better, for worse. We have the option to make changes.
I agree with you entirely.
So the scenario is another.
I was addressing his point.
Right, sir.
Okay. You made promises in your manifesto in 2008 that got the Ghanaian people to believe in your ability to perform better than the NPP at the time. They gave you the mandate for 8 years. Was it all your manifesto promises that you achieved? Was it? Even your 2012
and
manifesto.
That's why you criticize them.
No, absolutely.
And Ghanaians gave you power.
So I agree.
Don't replicate what they did.
I'm not.
I think that's his point.
The point that I'm making really is this, that we are politicians. We have noble intentions. I believe that the NDC has too, okay? And we think that this is the direction that this country ought to be managed, or the direction that we ought to go. And so based on that, we make a commitment to the people of Ghana. Unfortunately, circumstances do not allow us to be able to achieve all the things that we say to the people of Ghana that we are going to achieve. You don't meet yours. We unfortunately haven't met some of ours yet. You turn around and call us liars, having deceived the people of Ghana to vote us into power. What does that mean?
That's who you are.
So are you liar? Are you a liar too? When you told the people of Ghana that you're going to provide them with 110 premium insurance and you never achieved it, were you lying to the people of Ghana? Let's not do this to ourselves. Okay? We have our own plans and aspirations as a party. We come out, make commitments to the people of Ghana, and we work towards achieving them. At the end of the day,
president was in the Bonafo region.
They will have to judge us.
The president was in the Bonafo region, did some sword cutting, and then mentioned that his government was not going to project ghost projects to be projects that will be undertaken that not be now. Of course, it's in reference to the John Mahama-led government and the Mills government over the period. Since then, his office has come out with a statement itemizing the roads and polyclinics that have been undertaken. We have gas shortages around, but there's an ongoing impasse between Imani Ghana and the Ministry of Communications that is also available there. But let's look at the thing about ghost projects, etc. Let's look at this. The president goes to Bonafo and then says what projects had been mentioned but hadn't come into fruition. They essentially not been realized. But you have the office of the former president come to itemize roads that had been undertaken, some that had even been started, but currently have been abandoned. And that's not fair to the former president, is it? And especially to the Tamils government, we had done a lot of things, chip compounds undertaken in the Bonafide region, all itemized. I think for chip compounds we are 120.
Roland, you see, we ought to situate every statement that we make in context. Okay. And I recall when I accompanied then candidate Akufo-Addo during the 2016 electioneering campaign throughout the Western region.
Okay, you were campaigning in the Western region.
Yes, during the campaign rounds, I was with the president, then the candidate, throughout Western region. Of course, all that we had been told was that they had fixed roads, unprecedented infrastructure projects that had been done.
A lot of roads have been done.
I'm coming.
Please, that was a quarter.
Please. And candidate Akufo-Addo then said that, look, you guys claim that you fixed the infrastructure of this country. Yet, I drive around the country. I have been to Western region, and I cannot see the roads. You recall the response that Mr. Mahama gave him? You recall that he must be sleeping when he makes those rounds. You don't recall? That was the response that the president gave to then candidate Akufo-Addo. Now, fast forward 2018. He goes to Brongahafo. All the things that they say they have done. Of course, cheap compounds, polyclinics, or district hospitals. But where are the roads? People are crying. Every day, our constituents are crying that our roads have not been fixed. So it makes you wonder, so where is all the infrastructure that the NDC claimed to have done? Such that
the Akufo-Addo government has been in power for a year and 5 months. I believe this is the month of May. Some roads are even done in 18 months, etc. So I'm wondering. I don't know. And especially since he went round, he wasn't sleeping. Per what the allusions were, he had seen the roads. I believe those should have been the first thing you should have tackled January 2017. There's no argument. Your argument is actually moot. Maybe it would have been better in January 2017, but not valid today.
Roland.
Yes, sir.
I don't see how my argument is moot, but I can let it slide. Usually, the truth of the matter is this, that we have huge problems as a country. And I always say, when Suhini made a point that, yes, government is a continuum, and that any government that comes necessarily
but you do agree that during the JDM period, we saw a lot of infrastructure going on. Unlike what we've seen the last year and a half.
We saw projects, some projects having been done. During Kufuor's era, we saw projects that had been done. They claim that this government so far hasn't done anything. But I hear some contractors are being prevented from doing their work because apparently they are aligned to the NDC. So I asked myself, this morning I heard that the Ghana Highways Authority have threatened to go on strike because some party people are attacking them for awarding contracts to NDC people. So I asked myself, but a government that hasn't done anything, government that for 18 months hasn't done anything. Okay.
All right.
How can they award contracts?
Roland.
That's all right.
Roland.
I have copies of contracts that have been awarded.
Please wrap up.
Roland.
In Western region.
My time.
Roland.
Kumasi roads are being done.
You have 2
Yes.
minutes. Simple. Please.
Roland.
Please.
You see, there was.
So it makes you wonder.
There
really.
There was an argument earlier,
yes,
and I'm quoting from the MPP manifesto.
Oh.
The MPP believes that all hopes of Ghanaians for a bright future will come to naught unless the country is able to resolve its education crisis. That is why the MPP declares education to be a major priority and commits itself a bold, creative, and visionary and all-embracing program of the transformation of education in Ghana. The core elements of the program shall be A, and that's my emphasis, free education for all Ghanaian children up to senior high school to ease the burden on parents and guardians while encouraging them to assume their responsibility.
Your point has been made.
So the point is that
what point has he made?
All senior high school children Because those in second year and third year are not above senior high school. That was a promise.
Okay, now let's go on.
Now he says that.
Oh.
No, he talks about roads. I want to give him the roads in the Brown-Ahafo region. But you see, Roland, it is shocking that President Nana Akufo-Addo will drive around Accra and see the roads in East Legon and see the circle that has transformed and see the Burma camp, Gifford Road, and see the Kaswa interchange and fly all the way to Kumasi on his way to Brown-Ahafo and see the Kumasi airport and drive into Brown-Ahafo and still have that audacity and the confidence to describe the projects of President Mahama as ghost projects. It is simply amazing the kind of audacity the president has to look the people in the eye and see all these projects and actually use those projects and look the people in the eye and describe them as ghost projects.
Maybe he's talking about those that haven't been realized just on paper, but
Roland,
not.
Like my brother said, we have huge problems in this country. There is no way that the President Mahama government in 4 years could have finished all the roads in this country. But what cannot be taken away from his government is the fact that he did tremendously well. And look, the statement that has been issued, I don't think he has read it. He wouldn't have been saying that there are no roads. In fact, the president's office the former president's office took their time to break them down. I'm just looking for roads. I'm at health sector now. Road sector. It says Doma Hinkru Nkrankwanta Road, done by President Mahama. Doma Hinkru Town Roads, done. Doma Hinkru Bebiani Roads, done. Bebiani Atrenfo Roads, done. Nkranza Town Roads, done. Nkranza Jema Road, done. Wenchi Town Roads, done. Techima Town Roads, done. Techima Ofuman Roads, done. Jema Moma, done. Gwasu, done. And it goes on and on. And then he actually lists those that were on contract. Kintampo Town Roads, when the NDC was leaving office, it was awarded on contract, work was going on. Jema Town Roads, Atebubu Kwame Dansu Roads, Sankore Nobikwa Road, Bechim Town Roads. These roads were being worked on when the NDC left office. Apart from the over 16 roads, or town roads and community roads that were done. And these are with names. And you go in Bravo, and you go to the northern region, you have roads that were done, and those that were being done, which have all been suspended. You go to the Volta region, the Eastern Corridor. No matter how slow it was being done. Since this government came into office 15 months down the line, nothing is happening on the Eastern Corridor road. And the president actually comes to Parliament to boast that he has cancelled the contract because the contract was awarded on cocoa funds that is, recording low gains, and that was not reasonable. But the cocoa roads in the Eastern region, his hometown, are being done. Those that the NDC awarded haven't been cancelled. They are being done, still on cocoa money. But the people in the Volta region don't deserve that cocoa money. And so he says that our earnings on cocoa has gone down. And so it was unreasonable to have awarded that road on cocoa funds. But the Eastern region roads that we put on cocoa funds are being done.
I see the president maybe referring to projects.
You guys claim that this government hasn't done anything.
No. I'm saying the contracts that the NDC awarded are being done in the Eastern region.
You've been putting out all this while that this government hasn't done anything. I didn't know they were doing roads.
Roland, in the northern region, the contracts that were awarded have been cancelled or suspended. In the Upper East region, the Bolga-Boku Road is suffering. In the Volta region, it is suffering.
Don't you hear them say that point to us what we have done?
That is why the Ashanti region is complete.
You don't hear them say it.
The Eastern region is the only place where the contracts that the NDC awarded have not been cancelled.
So roads are being done.
Why?
Roads are being done as we speak.
Is it not a constitutional requirement?
I just want to know whether roads are being done in this country.
The national cake equitably. Is it not so? So why is cocoa funds not good for the Eastern Corridor Road, but it is good for the Eastern region roads? Why? And I'm shocked the president, like I said, had that audacity to go through all these projects. Look at them. My brother uses some of them. In fact, I'm sure the Gifford Road that I'm talking about, the Palace Mall area road, it helps him a lot because he lives around there. And he knows how it has helped his transportation and reduced his costs. And you also joined the president to call his President John Mahama's road as ghost roads when one is right in front of your house. Is that a ghost road you use?
But that's not the point.
We didn't bring you tea. We didn't bring you tea.
I indicated clearly that everything that every statement that is made ought to be put in proper context.
Now let's talk about education. Even in the
you want to cover education?
I want to cover education.
Oh no, I don't have time. Then you have more information.
Oh, what about the health projects?
Oh, it's okay.
Oh, what about the agri project?
It's okay.
All in the Akufo-Addo region.
Oh, Suhene. Alasan Suhene is a member of parliament for Tamale. No, we didn't bring you tea. Why was that?
It's Ramadan.
Happy Ramadan. Happy Ramadan. That's about.
Nah, not too much.
Okay, and then Alasan Suhene, member of parliament for Tamale North, and he's been in the studio with Andrew Ejapame. It's been great banter between the two. I always enjoy them. Andrew always comes in Bobo. Member of Parliament for Second D. And thanks for joining us. We know that there are gas shortages across the country because, well, those who are retailing the gas have been raising serious concern with the committee.
Says we should cook with electricity.
No, but of course, clearly, people are sabotaging a policy that you and I know would be beneficial for the people of Ghana. Yes, absolutely. Because of their
so we'll be speaking to another of our correspondents across the country. We'll be bringing you up to speed with what has been happening across the stations that tend to retail gas to ordinary consumers, not only domestic consumers, but also that those who tend to use it as fuel for their vehicles. But right now we have to take a break. When we come back, we have to do a lot more. But please keep getting interactive. Facebook, join us on TV. We have a regular channel on YouTube, My Joy Online TV. Watch us, give us more comments, and we'll be grateful. But in the meantime, a break will be up for now.